Welcome to the 3Haunted podcast, where we bring you all things horror, supernatural, folklore, mythology, and all things that go bump in the night.
Hey guys, this is your co-host Ashley Lunar Goddess, Gorilla Girl filmmaker and horror-loving cinephile. I'm just your average pun-making swearwolf that loves to explore the spookier things in life.
Hey everybody, I'm John Thomas, paranormal investigator, super smartass, and film lover extraordinaire.
What's up, ghouls, gals, and meta pals? Tonight we're putting on our Geeks of Horror hats and talking about one of our favorite topics. You guessed it, horror movies. Join us along with our phenomenal special guest as we jump in.
But first, a word from our network sponsor.
Are you looking for more awesome podcasts? Head on over to withoutyourhead.com for access to the Without Your Head podcast network, where you'll find a variety of podcasts sure to keep you entertained and coming back for more.
Hey, I wasn't laughing this time like always. All right, welcome back everybody. Like Ashley said, we have a very special guest with us. His name is Michael Modest. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Right on, guys. Thank you for having me.
Woohoo! Welcome, Michael Modest. So, very excited to have you on. We have been connected on social media for a while now, and low-key always seems to interact with my horror stuff. And so at some point I'm just like, all right, let's talk. Let's geek out on horror. And I love it because I don't even remember how we got on topic with one of the horror stuff, but I ended up mentioning some like random movie on Netflix. I'm like, I don't know if you've seen this. And he's like, oh yeah, I watched that like months ago. I'm like, oh, excuse me. But
Yeah.
but it ended up working out because he's just like, I watch every horror movie on Netflix.
I love horror films and have since I was a kid, and it's just my go-to. It's if I want to watch something, it's usually what I put on, and it's I don't know why, and it's more like I tend to really like more like monster movies or movies about the supernatural rather than slasher movies for the most part, because I guess it's just that battle of good and evil, which is why I like wrestling, because it's the same sort of thing. You got the good guy and the bad guy, and there's that classic, battle and clash. And so I guess that's one of the reasons why I love horror films.
Yeah, like horror and wrestling, I was telling you before, they go hand in hand.
Yeah. Some of my earliest memories of watching wrestling are my Uncle Rocky. He would come over to the house. My parents didn't watch wrestling, but my Uncle Rocky would come over and he'd go, hey man, let's go in the room and watch wrestling. And me and my cousins and my uncle, we'd go into my mom and dad's room and we'd watch wrestling while everyone else was out, being adults in the other room. And it dawned on me actually talking to Ashley that there's a connection there because wrestling came on before Creature Features. Bob Wilkins, on Saturday nights, I'd stay up and watch Creature Features. And usually I'd make the intro and fall asleep, but I tried so hard to watch the whole movie. But yeah, so I think wrestling and horror films, because I was trying to stay up and watch Creature Features, that's what got me into wrestling, was I would just, by happenstance, watch wrestling before the horror film, or my uncle would come over and, put it on.
Yeah, and I like how you say that's how you got into wrestling, but what some people don't realize is when you say got into wrestling, like you literally wrestle. Like it's not like you got into watching wrestling, right?
No, yeah, I wrestled. I wrestled in Japan. I've wrestled for WWE, WWF before it became WWE, and WWE, and WCW, and got to travel a lot. Wrestled in Ireland and Mexico and a lot in Japan, and really loved Japan. I have a funny story about 28 Days Later, actually, and I heard that you actually don't like that movie. So I watched I listened to the zombie one podcast that you guys did, and I couldn't believe that you said you didn't like 28 Days Later. To me, it was horrifying. It was. See, so...
Hold on. I'm going to clarify really quickly. You're mixing me up.
Oh, okay.
It was Lila. Lila didn't like it.
It was
his
my daughter. Yeah.
No, because I actually listed that as one of my tops. So out of zombie movies, that's one of my tops. She was the one who said she thought it was boring.
Okay. All right, good.
Okay, let's get back to your story.
Right.
I just wanted to clarify. I'm like, no, I do like that one.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that movie is awesome. And when I was in Japan touring, it released, and it was only playing in one theater at that point that I had access to, and it was 2 hours away on train. And what you're supposed to do when you're traveling is the first thing you do when you check in is you get your hotel key and some matches or a hotel card or some kind of, so that you can find your hotel if you get lost with a taxi or something. And I was so excited about seeing 28 Days Later that I forgot to do that. I took off, jumped on the train. Man, I got so lost. I never ever found the theater that had it. And I ended up having to call like one of the office people around 2 a.m. and told them, hey, I tried for the longest to get home to this hotel, and I'm totally lost in Japan now, and I needed help. And it was all because of 28 Days Later. Which, okay, so I'm horrified of zombies, and the concept of like a dead body coming up and running around, like you need to eat and have energy to even do that. So the whole concept of zombies is just asinine. There's no reason it should scare me so bad, but it does. The thought of dead people coming after you is just horrifying. And I worked at a mortuary while I was training to be a wrestler. There was a period of time where I worked at a mortuary for about a year. And there's a smell. We did a disinterment at one point. We dug a guy up that had been buried for 20-something years. And the smell it's earth-shattering. It's, to say that it's a bad smell is just such, it so doesn't do it justice, you know. It's just the worst smell that you can never even imagine, and your brain refuses to even believe there's anything that's that bad. So one of the things that always bothers me in zombie movies is someone will be walking down a hall and then boom, here comes a zombie right out of nowhere, right? Blah! And they're like, oh my God! And I'm going to tell you, you would smell that damn thing for like fucking feet, like, I don't know, 50 feet away, 100 feet away, you'd already be smelling it. Like, there's no way they could ever hide and get the jump on you. Like, you would so know. And you would know that it was getting closer by just the smell. You know, so anyways, sorry, I went off a tangent on zombies.
No, that's pretty cool. I actually want to see somebody do something like that in a zombie movie now, to be honest with you.
Just
to
whoa!
actually make it. Yeah.
They're coming!
Oh, and the other thing that always kills me is how they fight zombies, right? While you were fighting the zombie, you would be vomiting. You would,
because of the smell.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, yeah. You'd be fighting it, and you'd be going, blah, blah. It'd be so fucking overwhelming.
Oh my God. So I feel like the next Zombieland they make with all the rules to zombie killing, it needs to be like number 572, the smell. And they're just like plugging their nose with like Vaseline cotton balls or something.
Here's another fact, okay? Another fun fact. So while we were doing the disinterment, they had the county coroner was there, okay? And he threw up. And we all did the nose Vicks stuff, you know, and we did all the tricks to get rid of the smell. And it's kind of like spraying cinnamon spray on like shit and then smelling it and expecting it not to smell like shit. It's still going to smell like shit. It just smells like cinnamon shit now. And it's the same thing with zombies. If you put with dead bodies, you put that shit on your nose. Now it just smells like menthol-y dead shit. Like, it's horrifying. The smell is so bad. And me and this other guy, we got down in there and we strapped these like wraps around it. and they were pulling it up with the tractor. The coffin is in a cement vault, and that vault had got cracked at some point, and so water had leaked to where the coffin was. So the whole thing was a little bit creepy. And after we get it, locked up and stuff, I've watching horror movies my whole life. As I'm getting out, I just have this extreme feeling that something's going to grab me and pull me back down. So I hurried up, get out of the hole, and my boss says, "Man, I hope it didn't breach the coffin, because then it's going to be really bad, And at first it's coming up and everything's good, and then part of that coffin started to break, and this real thick brown, watery, it almost looked like coffee, started pouring out. Thousands of flies instantly. Like, it was amazing. It was like someone had sent out a fly invite, and all the flies were on time. No one was late to the meeting. And like just thousands, boom, flies everywhere. And we got the thing on our nose. I'm like, oh my God. It was bad. Oh, there we go again.
I think this is great. Like, this is what we're about. So I'm loving this story. So what did I know you did that, but like for the mortuary, what was your primary function?
I was the guy that came and picked up the dead bodies. And like I would pick them up at the hospital, I'd pick them up at homes, I'd pick them up at nursing homes. Yeah, and it's funny, when I was training to do this, I trained for like 3 days, and my boss and I didn't have one hiccup, not one problem at all. Everything went so smooth, and I was like, man, this is a really pretty easy job, My first time doing it alone, nothing but hiccups. Everything was horrifying, and everything was bad. Everything was so bad. My very first pickup, I went to a nursing home, and when you're the guy, you always park in the back of any hospital or any nursing home, because no one wants to see the Grim Reaper coming to pick up people. So I park in the back. I went up to one of the nurses. I found out the room for the lady that I was picking up, and I go in the room, and there's 4 ladies in there. They're all like in coma or not awake, so I can't tell who's dead. And I don't want to go around like poking, like, is this the dead body? Obviously. So I go back out and I tell the nurse, I go, hey, I can't tell who's dead, and I don't want to go like checking pulses, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, let me help you. So she gets up and she points the lady out to me. And I almost think the nurse was like, I don't know, somehow trying to mess with me. Maybe she knew it was my first pickup by myself. She leaves the room again. I lower the bed, but the lady doesn't lay down. She's still sitting up. And I'm like, oh, shit. I'm figuring rigor mortis. That's all I can think. So I put my knee on her lap, and I push down on her shoulders gently. And there's this, like, popping that's going on in her back. It's like, pop, pop, pop. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I can't, right? So I go back out, and I'm like, hey, I go back to the nurse. I go, hey, man, I'm trying to lay her down, but I can't get her to lay down. Her back's popping. And the nurse goes, oh, I should have told you. She goes, I should have told you. She has curvature of the spine. And I'm like, fuck yeah, you should have told me. Like, that would have been a really good thing to tell me. I'm thinking. So she says, I'll help you. And I'm like, fuck, please. So we go back in there. I want to get out of there, It's all uncomfortable. So we go back in there. She helps me get the lady to the gurney, and there's a bag. There's a built-in bag. So she's I put her in a body bag, and then she goes into a built-in body bag that's on the gurney. And that's the one. It's made of like material, and it gives the deceased some privacy so people can't see them and all of that. And one thing, I was really good at the job because I was very respectful of the dead. I didn't just treat them like a piece of meat, like that's somebody. And so I was real respectful. And so I get the lady in the bag, but just barely. The bag almost won't zip because she's sitting up, and So it was really difficult to push her down and get her zipped up. And now I'm wheeling her down the hallway, and she's bouncing up and down her head like she's alive. That's exactly what it looked like. It looked like she was like, get me the fuck out of here. And I'm like, oh, fuck, let me get out of here. And I'm trying to move as quick as possible. I don't want nobody to see me, and I don't want nobody to see her looking like she's struggling in the bag. And then right as I'm coming to the back door, man, there's this old man sitting in a wheelchair, and he says, "Oh my God, they're taking us alive!" And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? This is my first pickup ever, and like I've got people claiming that I'm grabbing live people now, and like this is terrible. This is the worst thing, you know. My next pickup was a guy that was like 6'10", 300 and something pounds, and I'm by myself, and I'm like, holy fuck, man, this is like moving a horse, you know, by myself. And
They were training you for your wrestling career.
yeah, they were. I locked the wheels on the gurney because I picked him up at a hospital, and he was already on their gurney, so I had to transfer him to mine. And I wasn't familiar with the hospital's gurney. I didn't know how their damn wheels locked, and I thought I locked them, but apparently one of the back wheels, I didn't lock the back wheels enough. And so as I'm moving the guy over, the gurney goes and starts just moving over. And I'm holding this 300-pounder, and I'm like, oh no, I can't drop the body. Like, that's the most disrespectful thing you can possibly do, is drop someone, you know. And I'm like, this is my ultimate nightmare here. But luckily I wrestled him and got him up on my gurney without dropping him. The reason I even went for that kind of work was I was thinking about being a police officer, or possibly like a paramedic or fireman. And someone suggested that I work at a mortuary first. It was actually a fireman. He said, "Oh, I suggest you work at a mortuary then." He goes, "Because dealing with dead bodies is the hardest part of the job." And he goes, and it's the most traumatizing part of the job. And if you're able to work at a mortuary and not have it mess with you, then you'll be good at this, you know. And none of those things were good for me. I decided to be a professional wrestler instead.
Beat him up instead.
Yeah.
And was it kind of hard to get into that world of wrestling? Like, do you have to know people, or is it you just have to kind of be good at what you do?
It kind of happened just on accident. When I was like 16, 17, me and a bunch of friends, we were part of this thing called the Vacaville Team Committee, and we convinced the team coordinator that it would be a good idea, because we all wrestled in the backyard, that it would be a good idea to rent a ring and have us perform a wrestling show and charge, and then take that money and put it back towards the team committee, you know. It was a different time then, and, you know, I guess lawsuits weren't so prevalent and whatever, so she went for it, and none of us were properly trained, and it was horrible, like just horrible. But we did 3 of them. Each one got a little better, and we started renting the ring from a guy named Jerry Monti, who was an Italian guy. My real last name is Cariglio. It's actually pronounced Cariglio. So Jerry liked me because I was Italian, and so he offered to train me. And I remember leaving the house for my first day of training, and my mom and dad said, "You're not thinking of doing this for a living, are you?" And I said, No. This is just, I want to do this for like a hobby. It's what I did for a living. It was a lot of fun. It was a good living.
And so now I'm bringing us back to the top, because I know, like, I got like super obsessed with talking about your mortuary experiences, but I brought you on to geek on about horror, and I know you did homework and you put lists together.
Yes.
So I have to know, because I am and always will forever be a vampire genre girl. That's my world that I love. Do you have a favorite vampire flick?
Yes, I do. So I like the 1979 Dracula with Sir Laurence Olivier and Frank Langella. That movie, first of all, my parents were so uber cool, because I was only 8 years old and my sister was 6. And my parents took us to go see that at the drive-in. And, it was rated R. And, man, that movie rocked. And it had one of the scariest scenes is when Sir Laurence Olivier goes to check on his daughter, Mina. She's buried, and he's worried that she's turned into a vampire. So he digs up her coffin. When he opens it, he sees that she's dug a hole down into the ground. He follows down this hole into like a cave system underneath the graveyard, and he ends up finding his daughter down there. He drops his cross in the water, and as he's fumbling around through the water trying to get his cross while holding his torch, he sees the reflection of his deceased daughter, and he looks up, and she's got these blood red eyes, and her face is peeling. She's not the pretty vampire, because he has to trade his blood for you to be that. Like if he just bites you, you become like just a ghoul. And so yeah, that was my favorite. Another one of my favorites, vampire films, which didn't even make it on the list because I forgot to put it on the list, was Near Dark. Have you seen that with Bill Paxton? Mm-hmm. That's an awesome flick, man. What cool vampires. And it added that terror of being kidnapped. The lead character gets attacked by the pretty girl, basically bit, and then they basically kidnap him. They're like, well, now you're part of us, so say goodbye to everything you knew. Say goodbye to your farm and your... Yeah, like that's a pretty horrifying thing. Also, Children of the Night, directed by Tony Randall, of all people. Tony Randall from The Odd Couple.
I feel like I've seen that one. I recognize the cover photo.
It's got Dom DeLuise's son in it, Peter DeLuise, Karen Black, and that one has a really interesting twist that the vampires basically sleep underwater, and their lungs have to come out of the water, so they cough up their lungs. Bizarre concept. But, I mean, Lost Boys, they're the coolest vampires of all time, right? They have to be.
Always a favorite. Will always be a favorite. Like, it never gets old for me. Actually, I was up in Sacramento for this Love Horror event for the Lost Boys tribute. It was like a 35-year anniversary, and they had Billy Wirth up there. They had one of the Frog Brothers. They had G. Tom Mack. It was phenomenal. I was like geeking out to the highest level of geek. I was so happy.
That's awesome. Billy Wirth, I don't know if you remember this, but he did really, really good on American Gladiators.
I didn't know he was on that.
Fun fact, he was a contestant on American Gladiators, and usually the gladiators would just beat the shit out of the contestants. It's almost like they would hire a certain contestant. They would look for a contestant that was like right around 160 pounds, in shape, but not like in shape, right? So that the gladiators just could manhandle them and toss them around. And Billy Wirth was like, he was on there, and they were like, oh yeah, he's a stunt man, this and that. He had a small part on the Lost Boys, and he kicked ass on that show, man. He was deadly.
I had my podcast shirt on at the event, and he asked me about it, and I mentioned, we do all topics, and I think I said something about, horror movies, supernatural, paranormal, like urban legends, aliens. And he's like, wait, you talk about aliens? I'm like, well, we have. And he's like, do you believe in aliens? Because I do. And I'm like, you wanna come on the podcast and talk about aliens? That would be awesome.
Yeah, man.
I'm about it. Like, let's do it.
I saw an alien thing, something that was really unexplainable when I was a kid. I was about 6 years old, and me and my friends, we were all playing. My neighbor had a really big yard, and behind in the backyard there was a big, like, not really like a cliff, it was like a hill, and it was just full of like loose dirt, and people were actually allowed to dump there just dirt, just debris like that, like yard stuff. You couldn't wasn't like a regular dump, but people could dump dirt and rocks and things like that back there. So we were playing hide and go seek in the dark. It was nighttime, and I ran back there. I was like, well, no one's gonna be brave enough to run back there and look past this little cliff, I'm gonna jump down into the dirt and hide down there. No one's going to find me. So I ran and I jumped down in this cliff, and I'm sitting there in the dirt, and I'm peeking up every once in a while so I can see, the person looking for everybody, and no one's finding me. And I duck back down, and I hear a humming behind me. It's like, and I turn to look, and I see a ball of light. And the ball of light was about 30 feet from me, and it was not very big, honestly. It was like, if this was an alien, they would be very small aliens, or this would be some kind of like drone that they were sending down to look at things or something. Because it was small. It was maybe about half the size of a VW Beetle. The weird thing is it was all light, but it cast no light. There was no light showing from it. Everything around me was still really dark. And I stared at it for a moment, and then it just went, pew, gone, like up in the sky. Could have been ball lightning. I don't know. It just one of those unexplained things.
But would ball lightning stay in place making that noise before jetting off?
I don't know. I don't know how ball lightning behaves at all. It was bizarre, dude. It really was. It scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. I'll tell you that. I ran immediately to my friends, told everyone, no one believed me.
Of course.
That noise that you had made, did anybody see or listen to the sound of the black hole that they just released?
No, does it sound like that?
So I think it was NASA. Somebody released like a recording of what a black hole sounds like in space. And it sounds creepy. It sounds like something you would put like on a Halloween playlist for like a Halloween party or something. It's really creepy.
Now I'm going to have to go look it up.
Definitely look it up.
I've heard that. And then they also have sounds of the planets. Some of them are like, wow, like they sound like monsters.
Yep.
You just sounded like a monster. So what you guys are saying is when I go listen to these sounds, don't do it before bedtime.
No, do it before bedtime. It's perfect.
Your shit. He's like, happy dreams.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know Exorcist was your number one, right? Why? Why is that like your epic number one? What about it?
Well, I've seen it so many times that I figure it's got to be my favorite. The lead up to it, I think, is very scary. And the fact that her mom even knows that something's wrong and still isn't able to help her daughter escape this thing. And another thing about it, and finding the book has been very difficult, actually. I think I will end up having to order one online. I've gone to a couple of bookstores and struck out.
Yeah, I remember I recommended it to you. I'm like, if you love the movie, you will love the book.
The re-release of it, where they had the extended footage of her crawling up the stairs backwards like a spider, and the images of the demon in the dark, where the candle blows out and then you see the face of the demon. That re-release of it made the movie fresh again as well. And I think the fact that it is the ultimate good versus evil. You have these people who are really powerless, and all they have is faith. That's it. They just have faith that God exists and God will fight for them. Where the devil is showing himself right out in the open, like, yeah, here, I exist, look at me. And these people have to just rely on faith to fight this horrifying force, Friday the 13th was my number 2. First appearance of Jason is arguably one of the biggest jump scenes in any horror film ever. Like, the whole theater, when I went to see that movie, when Jason jumps up, she wakes up and everything's good. She's on the canoe and she's like, oh, I survived. I killed the mom that was killing everybody. And then all of a sudden, Jason comes up out of the water. That jump is just so powerful. Alien made my list because my mom took me to go see that, just me and her. I don't know how old I was, but I was born in 71. and I think Alien was like right around 80 or something like that. So I was pretty young, and I wanted to go see it. I always had a fascination with like special effects. My mom would dress me up scary for Halloween, and my mom's a pretty good artist, so she would make me look pretty good. I put Jaws on here, Dawn of the Dead. Tom Savini, made an acting appearance in that film and did the makeup, which I think is really cool and probably not very easy to do, not super easy to accomplish.
Have you watched his documentary on like his journey through makeup and like practical effects? It's I forget the name of it, but someone did a whole documentary on him. He was part of it, part of the production of the story that it told. But I have not been a Tom Savini fan. I'll be honest. I like his work. I admire the things he does, like his appearance as Sex Machine and From Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah.
So fun. I like the stuff he's been in. I love his work. As a person, he's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way at like conventions that I've been at the same, like I've worked horror conventions. Just the vibes, they just don't like I clash a little. But with that said, I do respect his artistry and his career. When I watched the documentary, because they asked me to do a film review on it, I write film reviews for horror, mostly horror stuff for this one website. They asked me to watch it, do a review. I was like, okay. Because of course I have a chip on my shoulder. And I even wrote that in my review. Funny story. I was very honest about it. Like, I have a chip on my shoulder. I'm coming in with it. And by the end of the documentary, I'm like, all right, Tom Savini, I get your story. I get where you're coming from. So like, maybe still don't bark orders at me to get you coffee when you don't know me, but
Right.
in that same token, like, I'll fist bump you, I'll fucks with you. But the documentary was fantastic. He seems like he's a really awesome guy. Did a lot for like helping take care of his kids when they needed him. So I would say like I would recommend watching the documentary, whether you are or not a fan, because it's cool to see the process of like the prosthetics and the makeup that he went through, but also just to get a sneak peek into like the human behind that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's next on your list?
Nightmare on Elm Street. And that movie, I mean, obviously everybody knows how scary that damn movie was. It was freaking horrifying. And again, there's that element of not even being able to escape, it doesn't matter, you're gonna fall asleep at some point. The scene where he says, "Hey Nancy, watch this," and he cuts off his fingers, like just for shits and giggles, right? And they're squirting the green stuff all out. Like, what kind of nut cuts off his own fingers just to entertain somebody, right? So that movie was scary as hell. I put Dusk Till Dawn in there because I just thought it was such a cool movie, the way it starts off like more like an action crime kind of movie. It's not even a horror film at all. And then at some point, you're knee deep in vampires. Like, what a cool movie. What a cool concept,
Did you watch any of the sequels?
Yes, I did. I watched all of them. Yeah, The Hangman.
Hangman's Daughter.
And what's funny about the sequels is if you compare any of the sequels to the original, they all suck really hard, really badly. But if you watch them again and you go, okay, this isn't Dusk Till Dawn, it has nothing to do with Dusk Till Dawn, it's just a vampire movie, all of a sudden you'll go, that wasn't really that bad of a flick. Like, all of them are decent as long as you don't compare them to the original. It's untouchable.
I think not just comparing to the original, but also understanding what the intention is behind. Because if you like talk to Robert Rodriguez and you talk to Quentin, like, not that I've talked to them, but like the interviews that they've done about the films, like Quentin was associated with the first one, but then it was Robert Rodriguez the rest of the way through. And they wanted like part 2 to be campy. They want it to be spaghetti western meets vampires meets like a bank heist. And so when you start to understand like don't take it seriously. That's not what they meant for it to be. Then it's just like, okay, this is fun. I'm having fun with this. And I actually thought The Hangman's Daughter was it was beautiful. Like the colors they use. It's a period piece with vampires, so to speak. And like, it was beautiful. And I'm like, holy cow. Like you said, disassociate that it is part of From Dusk Till Dawn. It's not Clooney. It's not any of that. And it is a good movie. It still has a campy dialogue. Yeah, but it's meant to be fun. So I liked it.
So then after that, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Sixth Sense, because no movie... what I loved the most about Sixth Sense is that there's really no gore. There's really not much violence. It's just creepy. It's just scary. The scene where he's hiding in his little tent, and then the little girl, he turns, and the little girl's like puking up her oatmeal or whatever. And then the reveal at the end that this entire time Bruce Willis has been dead. That was just, mind blown.
Wait a minute, Bruce Willis was dead?
Shut up.
Spoilers!
For how long has that movie been out now?
After that, The Shining, which I saw a documentary on that, and it explains a lot to why it has that unsettling feel. One of the things that they did in that movie was they would shoot Jack Nicholson with a chair in the background, right? Far in the background, there's this chair. And then they would shoot him again, but they would remove that chair. And so they did lots of little things like that in that movie, placement of the Indians, because the whole idea was that it was, these Indian spirits that were there that were, angry. So they had placement of Indian flower when Scatman Crothers is talking to Danny in the first couple of scenes there when they're talking, and just little things that they did to make you feel unsettled or subconsciously engage you. I just think that's pretty clever.
But it's funny because your favorite movie, The Exorcist, did the same thing. Like the subliminal imaging that they put in throughout, that people didn't realize at first. That wasn't used as commonly when they first started doing that. And they were kind of one of the first movies that played with that. And people were like, why? Why did I feel so unsettled? I don't understand why her walking in the kitchen made me nervous. And it's like, oh, you didn't catch that pop of Pazuzu's face. It's fun to go in and watch it and look for those subliminal, images and where is Pazuzu hiding? And so, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. And then I went Hellraiser and Phantasm. So that was my first list, and I was like, those are the more popular movies, But then the 1979 Dracula made my other list. So my other list is lesser known. The movie Record, or REC. Mm-hmm. That movie is freaky.
I feel like I read your second list and I was just like, I think I've watched too many movies because it's to me, they don't feel lesser known, but then I take a pause and I'm like, well, actually, unless you're a horror fan, you probably wouldn't know those movies.
Right.
Some of the other ones are iconic. Like Jason is iconic. Freddy is iconic. So even people who aren't into horror, they're like, okay, I know who that motherfucker is.
Right. But they're pop culture now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the second list, one of my favorite zombie movies is Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things.
I haven't watched that. I haven't even heard of that.
I haven't seen it, but I have heard of it.
If you watch it, you're gonna go, wow, this is where Rob Zombie got his whole vibe from. Seriously, Rob Zombie's whole vibe is from this movie.
Okay, I'm gonna have to find where to watch it so that I can watch it. Oh, it's on Tubi for free. Okay, we're going to watch it on Tubi for free.
There you go.
I found it on YouTube just recently. Just yesterday, it was on YouTube. But it might be on Tubi. I don't know. But it is such a great movie. It's about these hippies, a bunch of kids. They're wanting to go out and party and have a good time. And they decide they're going to dig up a body. They go to this abandoned house. and they decide they're going to dig up a body and party with this dead guy. And so they dig up this guy named Orville. And one of the kids finds some satanic book. After that, shenanigans ensue.
Isn't that what always happens? A satanic book, boom.
Right.
Evil Dead. A satanic book, boom. Night of the Demons. A satanic, like, it's so many. Just like, leave the books alone, guys.
Yeah, stop reading around dead bodies.
If you see anything that requires blood or a circle or dead bodies, probably this is not the ritual for you.
Right. Leave it alone.
Unless you want, like, zombies, because some people might. Who knows?
Never know.
Another good one is Tombs of the Blind Dead. Have you ever seen those?
No.
They're funny movies because the zombies have no eyes because their eyes rot out, right? They're zombies. So one of the first things to rot is your eyes. So they have no eyes, but their hearing is like really, really good. And so that's how they catch people is they hear them scream and run, and they even ride horses at some point. The zombies, they were like Templar knights or something, but it still creeped me out when I was a kid. There's a point at the end of the movie where this lady, she knows that the only way the zombies can catch her is if they hear her. So she's just quiet. She holds her breath and everything. And the zombie's looking around, and then they do a close up of the zombie's ear, and then you hear like thump thump, thump thump, thump thump. And the zombie turns and looks, and man, he gets her because he can hear her heart beating, you know.
Oh, that's brutal. And you told me the end. What the fuck?
Still be worth a watch.
Spoiler alert for a 1972 movie.
Have you guys ever seen Boneyard?
Don't think I have.
When was it released? Is it the one in 91?
Probably. That sounds about right.
Is there a poodle looking thing?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
The pictures on this alone.
Here's the funny thing about Boneyard. It's another one of those movies that it's almost like two directors directed it. And the movie starts off where these like professional looking people, government looking officials, they show up at this house and they knock on the door. Phyllis Diller opens the door and she's got a poodle in her hand and she lets them in. And it's just like this rundown shack of a house. They come in and they sit down, and then it turns out that the house is actually like a cover for an underground government lab. And the floor opens up, and all these government official guys go down into this lab. Phyllis Diller's like, okay, bye guys, you know, I'll stay up here and guard the entrance or whatever. And so they all go down, and what has happened is they've found these 3 mummies in Egypt. They brought them back to the U.S. Some U.S. guy found them, and they've smuggled them back to the U.S. And the reason why is because of these scrolls that these zombies, or these dead bodies, these mummies have. The scrolls claim that the 3 mummies are the apocalypse. And the mummies are children. They're little. They have, some of the government officials are watching them like do this autopsy, not autopsy, but trying to remove these scrolls and investigate these mummies, when all of a sudden the mummies like get up and start killing everybody in the operating room, and then they start killing everybody in the entire facility. There's a really creepy part where they're looking down a long hall, and the little girl zombie, it's 2 little boys and a little girl. The little girl zombie mummy has her little doll. She's peeking the doll around the corner and making like these little noises, like like playing with these guys, these soldiers, right? She peeks her head around and looks at them and smiles and then ducks back and puts the doll back. And that movie is freaky, man. It's actually really good. And at the end, everything goes fucking crazy because the poodle somehow gets infected, and then it turns into a giant muscle-bound zombie poodle.
I was just watching the trailer as you were telling the story, and I just saw the poodle, and I was like, "Holy
The zombie
shit!"
poodle. That's the pictures I saw. The big old beastie zombie poodle.
Zombie poodle, dude.
Oh my god!
It's a zoodle.
It's a zoodle.
Other than the zoodle, everything's pretty good. The Sentinel. Have you guys ever seen that?
I've heard of it, but no, I haven't seen it.
Burgess Meredith was in that one. It's about a lady who moves into an apartment complex in like a city like New York or something like that. After she's moved in and she's been there a couple of days, she notices that at the very top of the apartment complex, there's a nun that just sits there staring out at the window at all times, basically. And all of her neighbors are very friendly, but a little eccentric, you know. And I don't want to give away any spoilers. You guys should watch that one. It's got a good story, and it's worth watching. Demons by Dario Argento. He directed that one. That one was so awesome. Just people at a theater get infected and start turning into these demons, and they're trapped in that theater.
Demons was just a classic.
Yeah.
That just... Dario, though. Dario is just
Off
epic.
the charts.
So,
just like Guillermo del Toro, Pan's Labyrinth made my list. That movie is so cool. The depiction of Pan. It's not just the movie, it's the whole story. It's so like dark fairy tale, you know. I loved that movie.
I'm a big fan of Guillermo del Toro. So, like, just anything he touches, I feel like is just so... there's the level of magic that he just puts into it. And it's his flair and his style, and I absolutely love his work.
Me too. Another one that you may have not seen. Have you ever seen Banshee Chapter?
I don't know. Let's see. I'm going to look it up. When in doubt, Google it out. 2013. Let's see. So that's a newer one. No, I haven't. I haven't seen that.
I haven't even heard of it.
Creepy. Super creepy. At the beginning of the movie, which I don't know the legalities on this, because Return of the Living Dead, they claim that that's a true story too. You know, the movie Return of the Living Dead. There's a part of it where it actually says this movie is based on true events, yada yada. So Banshee Chapter does the same thing. It says basically this movie is based on true events, and, you know, of course they've taken some liberties, but it's basically supposed to be based on true events. And what it's based on is the government did these experiments with sound frequencies, and they found that certain sounds can really mess people up, certain sounds mess up dogs, you know, and we can't hear it. And what they found is there's a frequency basically that opens a door to another dimension, basically. And so anyone that does this sound, that hears this sound, they're going to die, basically. This thing is going to come and get them eventually. And it's a really creepy movie. I really enjoyed it.
I think in any movies that say based on true events or based on inspired by whatever, it could be anything in the movie. Like, oh, the government did hallucinogenic drug experiments on people. This is kind of loosely inspired by that. So it's based on true events. Like, it's people get very creative with that disclaimer.
Right. It's like they totally do that. That's what I thought with Return of the Living Dead. I thought, okay, so probably the truth is the government did some tests on dead bodies and tried to see if they could get them to move, you know, giving electricity to different nerve endings or whatever, you know, and then they were like, yeah, and then, boy, that's when everything went crazy in the graveyard, you know.
And then zombies!
I just watched that movie again just recently, Return of the Living Dead, and it's so fucking funny. I love that movie. It's hilarious. It's scary too. It's funny as well. When the two, oh gosh, I can't remember their names. When the two employees basically wake up from opening the canister, which releases the Mudman zombie, they wake up and they call their boss, right? So their boss comes down. They explain to him that, hey, you know, the dead body in the freezer has come back to life, and we got to kill it, and the only thing we can think of is the brains, and so the boss gives one of the employees the pickaxe, and he goes, here, okay, you stand over here. He tells the other employee, he says, you stand over here and you open the door, and then you stand here, and when he comes running out, you pick him in the head with the axe. And then his employee goes, I don't think I can do this. And so, like, he tells his employee, stop being such a pussy. And then he hides behind the rack. And then, of course, when the zombie comes out, he runs right past the guy with the pickaxe. That guy does nothing. He goes right to the boss. And the boss actually makes that comic, like a Three Stooges kind of thing, like, yeah. And then they hit it in the head with the axe. And the thing's still yelling and screaming, and he goes, hit it in the brain. He says, I hit it in the brain. Now, that movie is so hilarious. The zombies kill all the paramedics, and then they use the radio, and they're like, send more cops or send more paramedics. I love that movie. What a great combination of horror and comedy. And honestly, I don't think too many movies do it very well. Like, to me, the movie starts becoming either a comedy or a horror film.
Yeah, finding that balance is really delicate. That's why I love The Lost Boys.
Right. Are you sure those are noodles you're eating?
They're only noodles, Michael. And even at the end, it ends on a comedy line, right? Like, Grandpa's just deadpan delivery. The only thing I can never stomach about living in Santa Carla is all the damn vampires. And then you just have him close the fridge on them, and their faces of just pure, like, what the fuckery. And then dun dun dun. It was just awesome.
Grandpa could have helped a little more because he knew all this info the whole time, like, Grandpa wasn't much of a hands-on kind of guy.
But he came through whenever you needed him, right? He saved the whole damn family. Destroyed his own house to save the family. So, loved Grandpa. All right. Well, holy cow, this time has gone by really fast. John, Michael, do either of you have anything you want to add geeking out on horror before we wrap it up?
One of my biggest complaints with zombie films is they got to get more about the smell of zombies, because, dude, that's one thing you will not ever forget.
Noted. Filmmakers, y'all better factor that in, because that's real.
100%.
Now, I just want to go back to when we were talking about From Dusk Till Dawn, how, like, everybody knows by now who's seen it, you think it's an action movie, and then all of a sudden it's like flipped around and you're like, holy shit, it's a horror movie. And I like how we see that with the characters. They don't know what the fuck's going on either. They're just like, we're finding out at the same time, and it's just like, oh shit. And I think that's what made me like it even more. Like, I was already into it before, and then it's like, oh, okay, let's see where this is fucking going. And then bam, like, all right, I like this. This is good.
That's another one that delivered comedy and horror well.
Yes.
Also.
Yeah.
Like, that just Cheech at the opening of the titty twister. Yes. Like, that just was hilarious.
If we don't got it,
fuck it. So, yeah, that was just, I'm remembering all these movies that I've loved and haven't watched in a while. And I need to revisit From Dusk Till Dawn, all of those.
Have you seen Afflicted?
Uh-uh.
Oh, man, that's an awesome vampire flick, man. And it's done mostly through camcorder. It's about a guy he's got cancer. It's either Afflicted or Affliction.
It's Afflicted.
No, it's Afflicted. I just looked it up.
And the doctors tell him basically, look, man, we could spend the next 8 months trying to save you with chemotherapy. You're going to be sick, and I got to tell you, it's not going to save you. Or you can just enjoy the next year of your life and, have a good time. So he decides he's just going to enjoy his life. He has this friend, and he says, hey, man, let's go on this epic vacation. It'll be my last big vacation. They go to this, like, dance club in this foreign land. They're in Europe somewhere, and this chick kind of comes on to him, and she's digging on this guy, and they end up going back to her room, and she basically tells him, you're sick, and he says, well, how did you know that? And she says, I can smell it on you. And she's like, but I can take that away. I can take your sickness away. She basically just starts beating the shit out of him, like throwing him around the room, and like he's powerless. He tries to defend himself, and she like grabs his hand and just beats the crap out of him. And then she bites him. She gives him the vampire virus, basically, which kills the cancer that's in him. Now he's not going to die from cancer, but now he's a vampire. And there's some scenes in there where he's running from the cops, because like a lot of it is his handheld camera. Now, when I say it's one of those handheld films, don't get the idea that it's like an unwatchable handheld film movie, because it's not like that. It's done really well, and there's some scenes where he's running from the cops, and he's doing vampire shit, like jumping 30 feet in the air, and, like, it's an amazing movie. The way they did it and the way they shot it is really cool. And if you like vampires, man, that's a good one to go see. That's a really good one to see.
The premise almost reminds me of Graveyard Shift, non-Stephen King's, but the vampire one. The first one is actually a woman that is sick and terminally ill, and she comes across this suave, sexy, taxi-driving vampire in New York, and he ends up turning her and like that whole thing. But yeah, that kind of reminded me of
I
that.
saw that movie. That's a good movie. I saw that a long time ago.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an older one. So I'm all about the vampire genre.
One of the things I loved about the 79 Dracula was the set. Dracula's castle, when Jonathan Harker goes to the castle and he walks into the castle, the spider webs, the magnificence of the castle, the rats and, creepy shit crawling around. It's all about that ambiance, it creates that creepy atmosphere without any real gore, I love when horror films are able to do that. Scare me and I wonder why, and it's really just the set. It's just, it's the lighting, it's the music, it's all of those other things,
Yeah, it's the art, it's the artistry,
right?
Building that world, like all of those little touches that are just so finessed that it builds this world that you can't help but feel uncomfortable. You can't help but feel like you're leaning into this horror.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's exciting. It's absolutely exciting. So yeah, that's me geeking out on all the horror world of the past. But I feel like the vampire genre really has to work for that, because it's hard to be afraid of just like a person that looks like us with some long teeth. So you really do have to build that world. Or you have to go super gore to get people unsettled. But that's why I love the older Dracula films too, because they didn't go super gore. They had to rely completely on the story and the aesthetics of building the world. So yes. But who doesn't like a little bitey blood? All right, John, any last thoughts?
No, I gave mine. We're good.
What about you, Michael? Any last thoughts?
No, not really, man. I think I went over my list pretty good.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Michael Modest. You're going to have to come on again and talk all things horror with us.
Well, I've got a great ghost story to tell you guys. I've got a couple of ghost stories to tell you. So we'll do that some other time.
Yeah, we have a ghost stories special that we do annually, where we have people come on, share their ghost stories. It's like 15-minute spots, but you can come on and share yours.
Oh yeah.
That'd be great.
Heck yeah.
All right, Jonathan Thomas, bring us home.
Yes, bring us home. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of 3Haunted Podcast. And again, thank you, Michael, for coming on. It was great to have you on. I am your co-host, John Thomas.
I am Ashley Lunar Goddess.
If you have any episode suggestions, comments, or questions, please feel free to email us at 300podcast@gmail.com. And like we ask always, if you haven't done so already, please follow, like, and subscribe to all of our social media. You don't want to miss one crazy moment.
Until next time.